What is going on, guys? I am Matt Moody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am at Fake Moods on X. I am the proud owner of moods.beehive.com, and we are here streaming a best puck draft. Sorry, we are not streaming it. We are condensing the draft into a bite-sized YouTube video for you. That's right. I thank you to everyone who joined this draft late at night. It was quite the endeavor, but you can see here McGill, Frostback, Evan V7, don't recognize that name, McCurds, I Like Kitties, Will Rush, Colin B, Ryan Oss, myself, Flop Winner, Bates, Count MC. If you don't know what we're doing here, we are drafting the Best Puck Classic contest, a $15 Underdog Fantasy Best Ball contest, meaning there's no waivers, there's no trades, you don't have to set your lineup. It's very good for a guy like me who always forgets to set his lineup come, say, January 3rd. But what we're going to do is I'm going to draft all 16 players here, and we're going to talk about them. And I'm going to cut out the fluff, and we're going to see how it goes. So make sure you check out my newsletter down below for strategy on this contest. I updated my Best Puck Manifesto for 2025 with the changes to the contest, and within that, there's also a link to last year's big manifesto where I wrote everything I learned about the game and how to beat it. So off the board early, we have a pretty standard start of McKinnon and McDavid. Because I'm sitting in the 9 hole, it looks like I am going to get one of Brady Tkachuk, Jack Eichel, Jack Hughes, Mikko Rantanen. Personally, I mean Brady Tkachuk is such a great fantasy player that it feels dumb to say this, but I don't love his upside on a week-to-week basis, which, he has lots of upside. All these guys do. But I actually prefer the 3 guys after him. So if I am fortunate enough to have access to all of those guys, I'm likely to go Jack Eichel or Jack Hughes just for, I like the looks of my teams better when I start with that stud center. But we'll see what happens. Look at that. We are on the clock. Brady Tkachuk just went. Leon Draisaitl before him. That leaves me with Kirill Kaprizov, ADP of 7, available at the 9 hole. I will happily take Kaprizov here. Kaprizov is absolutely, in my opinion, a top-tier talent. I think he's just flat out better than everyone else who was available to me at that position. So there's an interesting start to this. We are going to get a quick wraparound here. This is a snake format, so 9, 10, 11, 12 ends the first round, 13, 14, 15, 16, meaning I am up in 4 picks now at pick 16. And you can see the board start to take shape with Cale Makar always going in the first round, the only non-forward who goes in the first round. Typically, sometimes you'll see a Connor Hellebuyck slip into the back end of the first round, but a pretty standard start here across the board, I think, minus the fact that Brady Tkachuk went ahead of Kirill Kaprizov. Reminder that Kirill Kaprizov was on a possible MVP pace before his injury last season. So Minnesota's a team that I feel like is a little bit misunderstood by the markets. They're a very sound defensive team, but they do have explosive talent offensively. And last year, I think they could have put it all together if it weren't for the pretty devastating injury Kaprizov suffered. So I am back on the clock. I feel very strong about Philip Forsberg ahead of Marner, Reinhart, Panarin, Boldy. So I'm going to take Philip Forsberg. I'm going to guess that the Kaprizov-Forsberg pairing is not that common in best puck drafts. So let's check in a bit. We are coming up on my 3rd round pick, overall pick number 33 here. Pretty standard start from all parties involved. Interesting build from the Frostback going McDavid, Celebrini, Bouchard. That's obviously 2 centers and 1 defenseman. Something that is interesting about this specific contest is that Underdog's scoring system, the scoring system itself isn't that important. Goals, assists, shots, hits, power play points, blocks, and then goalies, wins, saves, goals against. But what's really interesting is the roster breakout. There is 1 center being scored per week. There are 2 wingers scored per week, 1 defenseman, 1 goalie, and then 2 flex. And the flex can be anyone besides a goalie. so a skater. And what's interesting about the center builds this year is that in years past, there's only been one flex, meaning that if the Frostback is taking McDavid and Celebrini, all of a sudden, if those two are his best players, which they should be, he's no longer able to use any other centers or any other wings or anyone in the flex position most weeks. So this year with the additional flex, that start is actually a bit more enticing. I'm still not fully about it, but let's jump back into things. I'm on the clock here at pick 33, like I said. I'm going to take a little bit of an ADP dipper in Sidney Crosby. I'm not too worried about these dips at the moment on players I'm not incredibly high on. But I'm confident enough that I can get one of Keller, Caulfield, Ovi, Kempe coming back to me. We'll see, though. We have 5 picks now between here and there. And if all 5 of these guys go, then, I think I made a bad mistake. So we'll see how it goes, though. What's interesting about Sid is that I really like his his teammates in Raquel and Rust. Odds are one of them is his line mate for most of the year, and the other one plays with Malkin, but they're power play. With Erik Karlsson, with the new coach, I think it'll be less of a gong show than last year. So I don't have much Sidney Crosby. Like I said, in the 9 to 12 range, I'm usually picking an Eichel or a Hughes anyway. So getting a center is usually not top of my priority list. So with Crosby falling, with all of that in mind, it's pretty rare, for example, that I'll have a Philip Forsberg who goes in this 14, 15, 16 range with Sid based on where he goes in the 30 range if I already have Eichel and Hughes on, my Forsberg teams. So that's the thought process. It looks like we're going to get one of Keller or Ovi. So that did work out for me. And that leaves me with Mr. Alex Ovechkin. I'm in a bunch of solo drafts right now, I think like 20. But I believe that when those are done, I'm going to have the most Ovi of any player in this contest at the moment. I just don't care that he's old. I mean, we've seen it year after year. He even had the worst case scenario last year. The man broke his leg and still absolutely smashed when he was on the ice. Like, he came back and just continued scoring goals. I get it. He's another year older. He's less incentivized than ever because now he has the goals record. But this is a man who is built to produce fantasy points. He shoots a ton. He scores goals like the best of them. He chips in assists, too. I mean, his teammates are just good. He's on a good hockey team, this Capitals team. So I love Alex Ovechkin. He's one of my biggest stands once again. An interesting find on the newsletter, if you dig back to last summer, was a lot of people were saying Ovi wasn't going to do it. And again, he broke his damn leg and still did the thing. So that is one of my biggest wins here. Unfortunately, I was too much of a coward to bet it. I think it was like 9-1 before the year last year. But, I wrote about exactly why I thought Ovi was going to do the thing and break the record. And he did. As we see the board continue to take shape here, I just wanted to point out a few strategy thoughts I have going into, this next middle section of the draft. Like I talked about with Sidney Crosby, because I'm taking Crosby and I don't have much Sidney Crosby to begin with, I want to prioritize Pittsburgh Penguins in this draft, meaning I want at least one of Rust, Raquel, or Erik Karlsson. Because of the ADP values I've gotten so far, I have no problem diving down the board to grab one of those guys when it makes sense. But also, I need to keep in mind that goalies are going to get off the board very quickly. So because we're waiting on Pittsburgh for probably this 88 to 129 range, I want to make sure I don't need to, say, draft 3 goalies in that range. Meaning, I might double tap goalie here at 57 and 64, depending on what's available to me. We see it looks like Evan V is a poor schmuck that's auto drafting at the moment, getting Werenski and Yossi. It's possible he's not. Again, the 2 flexes makes it so that a lot more builds I think are eligible to, competitive this year. But at least pretty indicative of the fact that he's auto drafting. So Michkov goes off the board. He was the star of my Garfield themed newsletter post from last week. One of the guys who I looked at, there's a whole premise to it, but basically I looked at his production post Four Nations break, and this guy was absolutely dominant. And they went out and got him help. They went out and got him Trevor Zegras. All their young players are another year older. They kicked out Torts. They brought in Tocchet, and for his credit, Tocchet has some experience in running an up-tempo, fun team. Torts is not. So I think the sky's the limit for Michkov. I've talked about his fantasy profile a ton, but this guy, in my opinion, is right up there with Connor Bedard as the best fantasy prospect to enter the league since like 2010. That includes McDavid, just the way his shot generation is. But as I approach my pick, I would be happy to take Bob. Yes, it looks like I will get Bobrovsky. In general, I'm shying a bit away from the Florida Panthers. If you think back to last year, they had a chance to win their division outright in the final weeks of the season. We're talking 3 weeks from the playoffs. Not anything like, oh, it's, tomorrow and we have this game. Like, we're talking weeks away. And they were just flat out resting guys. That worries me. The fact that they went out and traded for Daniil Tarasov instead of having, I think it was Vitek Vanacek who they traded for as their backup. Having an actual guy who they invested a little bit of capital in makes me think that Bob isn't super likely to, say, get 60 starts. But goalie's goalie. I don't think there's many goalies that are going to get, say, 4 starts in a week. On a back-to-back, things like that. Bob's definitely not come the playoff time. Like, Bob is not that guy. But I think the goalie position is strange enough that you can get away with that. You just need to have, a shutout at the right time. And this Florida Panthers team is obviously very strong, even without some of their top guys in the lineup. So while I don't want to take their top guys, who are going to miss games, potentially, Kachuk's obviously missing games, but guys like Reinhart, Barkov, it's very possible they rest down the stretch when you need them the most, given what we learned last year. But the Panthers are a team that, again, I'm not targeting them, but Bob is an okay pick in my book because the nature of the goalie market is you're not looking for 82 games. You're looking for, 50 to 55, and you're looking for some wins in the right weeks. And I think that Bob can get you that, and he's priced accordingly. So it does suck, I think, that UC Saros went off the board. Saros was the exact type of guy that I would love to complement with Bob. There's a lot of defensemen available, which is interesting, but I am going to pass on that. Like I said, I want to keep my powder dry for some Pittsburgh stuff coming up, so I'm going to draft another goalie, just take the next best goalie available in Aiden Hill, and that leaves me with a team so far of Kaprizov, Forsberg, Sidney Crosby, Ovechkin, Bob, Aiden Hill. If we're talking about mid-round targets, Forsberg, of course, has Stamkos available late and Marchessault available even later. Both of those are wings. Ovechkin has guys like Tom Wilson available in my next range of picks. Probably not in 3 rounds, but also some late round centers that I could get between Strome and Dubois if I want some Washington action. And then I've already talked about the Crosby stacking options. So those are pretty high on my priorities list right now, since obviously I don't have any correlation on this team currently. But I'm also definitely making sure I grab another center sometime soon, because all the players I just mentioned, minus the late round OV guys, are wings. So that is where my head is at. Let's see how the board shapes up. I am now 3 picks away. I just wanted to point out this poor Evan guy here. Hey Evan, hope you had a nice night of sleep. He's just auto-drafting through it right now. Through 7 rounds, he has 3 centers and 3 defensemen. Not ideal. I'm sweating out a couple of center options here. Wyatt Johnston, Eric Sinek just went off the board. With 3 picks ahead of me, I'm looking at Sebastian Aho as my preferred pick. If I had my choice right now, it looks like Trocheck and Timo go ahead of that. So hopefully we get Sebastian Aho here. Let's see what Ryan does. But again, we have a glut of Aho goes. See, now this is the part where flexibility is important. Even though I do want to take a bunch of wingers in just a little bit, I think this will be a 7-wing team. So I'm going to just grab Kevin Fiala. I like Fiala more than Robert Thomas, Nico Hischier, Nazem Kadri, and I don't really want to take another goalie. So let's get Fiala and figure out what happens at the turn. All right, here we are, back on the clock. Top of the queue now is Nico Hischier. It's at ADP, so not a huge discount there. I could take a third goalie, but again, I really want a center to reinforce this room. So while I could dive down the board and take a type like Raquel, Tom Wilson, like I talked about with my stacking options, I'm going to push it a bit because Stamkos and Rust should be available at my next turn, and I'll get Nico Hischier as my clock runs out, and luckily I'd start him. So right now we are looking at a team with 2 centers, 4 wingers, 2 goalies, and 0 defensemen. I could certainly mix in a power defenseman in this next run, but I'm right now sort of thinking in my head, I'll wait for an Askarov or a Spencer Knight as my third goalie, given I have Bob and Aiden Hill, who I feel quite confident in, because I'm going to need those spots to eat up some defensemen before that runs completely dry, as well as getting at least 1 or 2 wing stacking options for some of the players I've mentioned. What taking Kevin Fiala does is it also gives me the possibility to take a third center in Quentin Byfield in a part of the draft that I don't normally take. I'm not normally taking a center that's, I guess, Quentin Byfield specifically, in this like 140-ish range. So if that's available to me, I could also take that option for some extra correlation in this team. As picks are flying off the board, I just wanted to highlight I am 7 picks away, hidden by my stupid face here. Hi, what's up? I'm 7 picks away, and the way the board has fallen, there's a chance I might get one of Jeremy Swayman, Tom Wilson, Dougie Hamilton, all of whom I think would fit in really well with this team I've built, and also our ADP values if they do make it to me. We'll see. I don't have the utmost confidence in that, but it would be an interesting development to sort of fit the build that I'm looking to do while getting ADP value. So we'll see about that. Yes, Evan, of course, auto drafting Jeremy Swayman. Well, maybe that's not an auto draft because that's not the earliest ADP guy, and he doesn't have enough wings, so Dylan Holloway should have gone. But anyway, so Jeremy Swayman goes, meaning I now have 4 picks to sweat between getting one of Tom Wilson or Dougie Hamilton to go along with my, that's not me, this is me, my Nico Hischier and my Alex Ovechkin. So let's see what happens here. Will Rush, by the way, already took Ricard Raquel, so while he was someone I certainly had penciled in for this 105 pick slot, didn't come to pass, and that's okay because I will get one of the guys I had targeted. So, I guess if I had my choice, I would take Dougie just because there's more wingers that I want than defensemen at this moment, and I have no defensemen. Because what I think happens at defense is, let's just grab Dougie and then I will showcase this. I think what happens at defense is it runs out quicker than wing. Basically, after Morgan Riley, I don't feel great about any of these options. I'll take John Carlson in a pinch, and I am certainly because I'm drafting Alex Ovechkin. But I'm not convinced that John Carlson gets the entire year on the Capitals' top power play. I just think Jake Chikrin's too good, and I think that the team has too many talented players to stick with a 2 defenseman power play setup for too long. And you're also just asking like Rasmus Sandin to do a little bit too much, in my opinion. Quarterbacking the second unit, they should be using forwards there, especially bringing on Ryan Leonard and guys like that who should be playing on the second power play. Meaning if I want to draft 3 defensemen before say like pick 150, taking Dougie there, I think makes a lot of sense. And look at that. The turn happened, and I just so happened to get Tom Wilson 10 spots after ADP. I mean, that is an awoo right there if I've ever heard one. So join me. Awoo! All right, and we're now up in, it looks like, 5 picks. What's happened since the Tom Wilson pick hasn't been great, to be expected, but Brian Rust, Jake Chikrin, Steven Stamkos all go off the board. I mentioned Sidney Crosby as a key guy I want to stack around. Basically, now my only option for that is an Erik Karlsson, which, I can certainly do. But a lot of guys now no longer sort of have natural stacking partners for my team. The one option I still have in mind is Quentin Byfield down here, but I'm not taking him at pick 129. Dylan Strome at pick 130 ADP is a little bit interesting, given I've already bet on Ovechkin and Tom Wilson. But what I'm thinking of doing is grabbing Brandon Montour as my second defenseman. Yes, and so I'll grab Montour. He's just, he's a bit of a stat stuffer. He'll hit, he'll block, he'll shoot, and he'll get points if the team's any better. He could even have actual upside. And again, I'm sacrificing goalie here. We see Spencer Knight has already gone. I'm basically drawing dead to having a solid third starter if I don't get Askarov. But, you look at this block of players now. I can take someone at this next pick at pick 136, and yes, I have to wait a good long while for my next pick after that, but I think I might be able to get one of these guys at, pick 153. These aren't the sexiest names in the book, so I'll at least give myself a chance, I think, for a big win. But we'll see what the board looks like, because if Dylan Strome goes, I might just take Erik Karlsson anyway, to cap off the D room and give myself, a clean look at what I want to do next. All right, and we are now up. If you look at the board by ADP, Dylan Strome is the top of the queue. I think I'm just going to take that value. Dylan Strome is not a great permanent player, but, I have Alex Ovechkin and Tom Wilson, who certainly are great per minute fantasy producers, and if they have a spike week in the weeks you need them, Dylan Strome is almost certainly coming along for the ride. They might not be 5-on-5 correlated. Tom Wilson might play with Pierre-Luc Dubois like he did for long stretches of last year, but their power play roles should be secure. Even if it's Karlsson and Chikrin on the top unit, it'll likely be those three anyway. And at the end of the day, I can take a fourth center with this room very easily, given my strength of wings in Kaprizov, Forsberg, Ovi, Fiala, Wilson. If I just had one guy there, I would be totally fine with that room. But what I'm really hoping for is that Erik Karlsson somehow survives 12 more picks. That's my number one sweat here, even more so than goalie, which I'm totally comfortable kind of punting off the position. So we'll see. If I miss out on Erik Karlsson, I could fall back on Brandt Clark with my Fiala stack. I also have, let's see, I had noted, did I must have missed Byfield going. Yep, oh, well, he just went, so I don't know. But anyway, with Kevin Fiala, I have a couple of late round options in LaFerriere and Brandt Clark to just get some correlation. It's not necessary. It's not going to be, how I'm designing this team, but I'm going to star them because just in case nothing else comes to pass, I would be more than happy to take those guys with a late round pick. We see Askarov goes, meaning I'm pretty much out on goalies. You could argue Jack Greaves and Tristan Jarry are startable options who could be starters. I think I lightly prefer Sam Ersson in this scenario. I'm not at the point of the offseason yet where I'm trying to balance my range, as far as, I have, 10% of this guy and 2% of that guy, so let's balance it. I'm not super concerned about that. So I'm just going to let goalie, I think, come to me as it will. But these are sort of the three guys that I have in mind currently. And that sucks. Jared McCann does go, so all of the stacking options that I had in mind are now off the board. John Carlson would be fine. He's just not someone I'm very excited to draft. So let's see what transpires though, because we could be we could be losing a defenseman to one of Colin or Ryan here. Ryan especially looks like he's building a sharp team, but he takes Darnell Nurse, so I do get John Carlson. I'm not hooting and hollering over this ADP drop. I don't really think it matters much. I know everything about John Carlson is pointing toward a decline, and I think the field also agrees. But if I'm betting on a resurgent Washington team, why the hell not? Let's just take a 4-man stack, get Strome, Ovi, Wilson, and John Carlson. Now, Brant Clark is obviously not on the table. I could take Laferriere if I want to. I am looking for a center and a wing. I'll take one of these two goalies, but not right now. I could just go for safety. Someone like Ryan Donato stands out in that respect. I have my bet on this team. Like, my bet is the Washington Capitals are going to be a team you needed to have in the playoffs. In order for me to win a lot of money, if Ovi, Wilson, and Strome and John Carlson all suck, and the Caps suck, they're all playing for the same team, I'm probably doomed. So do I need to, go off the board and grab something crazy like Laferriere and, stack it up, stack Crosby with Rutger McGroarty, or should I just take someone who I know I like more than the field does at this draft spot? I sort of lean toward the latter. So Ryan Donato, I believe, would make a ton of sense here in round 14. Because, then I have a Marco Rossi center pick later, too. That would be a nice fourth center for a team that goes with Kaprizov. So let's take Ryan Donato. We will close out the wing room at 6 wingers. Kaprizov, Forsberg, Ovi, Fiala, Wilson, Donato. I said 7 earlier, but of course I missed out on Stamkos and Marchessault to correlate with Phil Forsberg. I missed out on Raquel and Rust to correlate with Sidney Crosby. And I think I've adapted appropriately to give this team a pretty significant shot at some decent upside here. So we'll cross our fingers and hope that Marco Rossi survives through to my next pick. But, Marco Rossi is in the news as of late. He got the bridge deal done, $5 million for 3 years. Clearly an investment. I would have loved to see Minnesota go longer term on Marco Rossi, in all honesty. Like, I just think he's a really good player. But, at the end of the day, they don't have many other options to play with Kaprizov. They could go Eriksson, Boldy, Kaprizov, but they've shown, and I think they're right to, an aversion to doing so just because of what it does to the rest of their lineup. And Marco Rossi and Kaprizov were great together. So while the power play role is certainly not set in stone, Zuccarello probably hangs on to it for at least the start of this season, and Marco Rossi will really have to earn it from him. There's a lot of upside because of how good Kaprizov is, and I've already bet on this team being Kaprizov smash because I got him at pick 9. So there's not many teams with Kaprizov smashing who will be able to follow it up with a Philip Forsberg and an Ovi stack drafted after ADP pretty much between Strome, Ovi, Wilson, John Carlson. I got a ton of ADP value there. So that's what I'm hoping for. But let's see if we can get this across the finish line. All right, I am almost up here. In a bit of an interesting conundrum, looking at the turn here, I'm going to take Marco Rossi because, so Bates needs a goalie. He's almost certainly going to draft one in here. I don't think Flop Winner's going to draft a center. And these other two have 4 centers already, and I don't think they're going 5. So actually, I'm going to take Sam Ersson because I think the drop-off there is significant enough in terms of workload certainty that I could take a major loss here. I also have a backup plan of Shane Wright if needed. Okay, Flop Winner did take a center, but he actually took Elias Lindholm, who wasn't. Oh, he took Morgan Geeky. So there you go. The Geeky Lindholm stack. He's definitely taking a defenseman at the next pick, I would guess, given he has Dahlin and Zeev Buium, who, I love Zeev Buium. Don't think he's a guy I'm hitching my wagon to necessarily in a two defenseman room. So I think we're going to make it out with the team that, wasn't exactly what I drew up from the start, but a team that I'm very, very happy with. All right, and just like that, Marco Rossi is ours. So, in summary, we have, starting from the 9 hole, Kirill Kaprizov, ADP value there. Philip Forsberg, also, I think, a touch after ADP. I think he's like 15. Sidney Crosby, ADP faller. Alex Ovechkin, ADP faller. Bob, Aiden Hill. Kevin Fiala, Nico Hischier, Dougie Hamilton, Tom Wilson, Brandon Montour, Dylan Strome, John Carlson, Ryan Donato, Sam Ersson, and Marco Rossi. That means I have obviously the Washington stack of Ovi, Strome, Wilson, John Carlson that I've talked about. I have Kirill Kaprizov paired with his likely center in Marco Rossi. I have Nico Hischier paired with Dougie Hamilton. A fun little micro edge there is that when Dougie was healthy last season and Jack Hughes was healthy, Nico and Dougie played almost exclusively together. It was a bit of an interesting on the road, I should say, or one of the two, at home or on the road. Then it was kind of more split up in the other instance, where it basically looked like they were using their shutdown pairing of Brett Pesce and whoever to sort of insulate other lines because Hischier's so good defensively. So I think this was on the road. But just a fun little thing I learned from DFS is that Dougie and Nico tend to correlate much better together in some instances. So again, should you be thinking of that when you're drafting? You probably don't have to. It's not the end of the world if you do, though. Because, Nico Hischier, Dougie Hamilton, they could share a power play unit, and if the New Jersey Devils are good, they will also be good. And anyway, to cap things off, that is the full extent of my correlations on this roster. I took 4 centers, 6 wings, 3D, and 3 goalies. Looking across the room, it does not seem like anyone wound up with too crazy a team other than the aforementioned Evan V7, who has 5 defensemen, including Orensky and Yossi. Clearly just auto-drafting, got stuck with a pretty bad team there. Tyler's team, the Frostback, very interesting. He started McDavid, Celebrini, and still managed to get 5 centers. That's because he only took 2 goalies, Logan Thompson and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Gotta say, I think that's a little light on goaltending myself. So, is Byfield and Leo Carlson really necessary here? You could at least argue Leo is correlated with Cutter Gauthier, but, and Boone Jenner. So I guess you're just drafting late round guys. I mean, whatever. But that team stands out to me. Across the board, it looks like these other teams are pretty reasonable. The McCarr team goes McCarr, Quinn Hughes, so he has an extra forward slot to do with what he likes. And he likes the Rangers, apparently. Miller, Panarin, Trocheck. He was not the Lafreniere drafter. That was Colin here. But a bunch of Rangers and a lot of centers and 6 wings still. So decent team there. He has the Raquel Rust. Maybe I'll trade him Sidney Crosby. Just kidding. Can't do that. If you're new here, you can't do that. There's no trades here. I think Ryan's approach is interesting to late defensemen. But I don't even know if you go late defenseman if you need to take 4 of them. Obviously Lacombe, Nurse, Chabot, Wallman is pretty weak anyway. But, defense is a very hard position to separate in. And odds are you're going to need one of these guys to really ascend to be competitive anyway. And if they ascend, you don't need 4 of them. So, it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't, in my opinion, once you miss, say, like the Morgan Riley tier of defense. But I don't think this is a situation where 4 is better than 3 necessarily. Whereas I would say, at the center position, that would be better just because of how upside driven their scoring can be. In the back half of the draft, nothing overly concerning or noteworthy from these fine folks as well. So hopefully you all enjoyed this draft recap. In the future, I'm hoping they're a little bit shorter. Even with the pauses, I believe this went on a little bit too long. But hey, leave me a comment on YouTube. Make sure you thumbs up the video. Make sure you subscribe. Do all the things. Look down here, down here, the bottom of the screen. Moods.beehive.com @fakemoods on X. Just follow me all the places. It's much appreciated. And let me know in Discord or in the comments what you liked, what you didn't like, and maybe what you want to see more of. So, with all that said, thank you all for listening. We will see ya.